Republicans have been pushing the FBI to release information related to the Biden family's business dealings. Now a top Democrat joining those calls with Republicans. This as the two parties are expressing opposite views on whether this investigation is even open. NTD's Melina Wisecup reports.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, who is the ranking Democrat member on the Oversight Committee, wants the FBI to confirm in writing that President Biden is not under federal investigation for bribery. Of course, this is related to that ongoing probe from the Oversight Committee into the Biden family. That probe alleges that the Biden family received over $5 million from a foreign national to influence policy decisions. Now, the entire Oversight Committee has had a chance to view that bank document, but ranking member Raskin and Republican Chairman James Comer had a closed-door meeting with the FBI. In that meeting, and from that meeting, emerged two conflicting accounts of what the FBI has to say about the current investigation. Raskin said the DOJ relayed that they found insufficient evidence to warrant escalating this assessment to a preliminary or full investigation, and it was closed. Bill Barr has said it's not true. It wasn't closed down. On the contrary, it was sent to Delaware for further investigation.
Former Attorney General Barr might be aware of something that I'm not aware of, and that's fine, but that's not inconsistent in any way with what we were told by the FBI, which was they shut down that particular investigation.
And this contrasts from what we've heard from Republican Chairman James Comer, who said that the FBI personally told him and Senator Chuck Grassley that this document, the FD 1023 document, is related to an ongoing investigation.
That according to Bill Barr, then Attorney General, they got the Form 1023. They took it seriously, but they didn't look into it. They just passed it along to the U.S. Attorney in Delaware.
Raskin now wants the FBI to rectify those contradictions, providing a statement of clarification no later than this Friday. In other news, the FBI is up to face even more scrutiny this week as the House puts more attention on the Durham report. John Durham is expected to testify before two House panels on his report into Crossfire Hurricane that looks at the contacts between former President Trump's 2016 campaign and Russia. Durham will first testify behind closed doors to the Intel Committee starting tomorrow. Then that second hearing, which will happen on Wednesday, is before the Judiciary Committee, and that is open to the public. We will be following those hearings closely this week. It will be a very busy week for the Intel and Judiciary Committees. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
Former President Trump is not allowed to speak about evidence regarding the Mar-a-Lago investigation anymore. A judge today signing off on a set of restrictions. It stems from a request by special counsel Jack Smith. Smith had requested that Trump be prohibited from talking about evidence in the Mar-a-Lago documents case, and U.S. Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart signing off on that request. That's the same judge who approved the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago last year. The same restrictions now apply to co-defendant Walt Nauta. The defense did not oppose Smith's request. And how has the most recent indictment against former President Trump affected his polling numbers? Joining us next to discuss and shed some light, head of polling at Rasmussen Reports, Mark Mitchell. Mark Mitchell, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure to be here.
Mark, you guys have a few fascinating polls at Rasmussen that you've just released recently. Have you observed any notable changes in public opinion or poll numbers for former President Trump following his indictment? I know at Rasmussen you have a new poll out. What can you tell us?
There have been some major swings in public opinion. And I wish I could come on and say that the big swing now because of these indictments is everybody flocking from Biden to Trump. But that already kind of happened. So since the 2020 election, we've asked, I think it's 7 or 8 times now, a hypothetical rematch between Trump and Biden. And we waited until about the fall of 2021, until after the Afghanistan withdrawal. And we were absolutely blown away by what we saw with basically the same methodology and weighting that we used to directionally predict that Biden would win the popular vote in 2020. We showed that Trump would beat Biden in a rematch by 11 points. And then 2 months later, that expanded to 13 points. So that was major news at the time. And we kept testing it. And through most of 2022, Trump kept about a 6-point lead over Biden, which, again, is just incredible for it to be that stable. Like, definitely not noise. People who voted for Biden woke up and decided that they wanted to vote for Trump. But what happened coming into this year was kind of interesting. So after I guess what many would call an underperformance of Republicans in the midterm elections, Trump had a string of pretty bad publicity calls. He was launching NFTs, and people weren't very happy about him supporting Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. And in the beginning of February, for the first time, he actually lost to Biden in a rematch. Now, the numbers were in the low 40s, so a lot of that is it's far from election, and it's more people, a referendum on their current opinion about the candidates, and Trump's was down. So I think Biden was up 45-42. And what happened in the ensuing month or two is that the Alvin Bragg indictment came down in New York, and people were just really upset about that. A vast majority of voters thought it was basically a radical district attorney carrying out political vengeance against Trump. And the numbers swung an incredible 10 points to put Trump back on top over Biden, 47-40. So now, since then, we've had other indictments, and Trump is still up. He's up 45-39 points, so only up 6 points. It's probably statistical noise. But the biggest thing out of all of that is really the internals are fascinating. Who shifted from the last time we asked to where they're at today? And right now, 76% of Democrats would vote Biden. Back after the Alvin Bragg indictment, it was only 70%. So a lot of Democrats, at least in this sample that I drew, are happy and are more supportive of Biden after this Trump indictment came down. And believe it or not, actually 5 points of Republicans jumped ship. He was at 83% and now is down to 78%. There are probably some Republicans who are looking at the charges, looking at the optics of some of the case things and saying, well, maybe he did do something. But the big one is the independent shift. Trump was only winning by 8 points with independents back, again, just 2 months ago. And now he's up 20 points. He's winning 46% to 26% among independents in this number set. And that's just incredible. And in all of the other questions we asked in this set, the independent signal is really what's driving the numbers. So one of the other questions we asked is if President Joe Biden is a better president or a worse president than most recent presidents. 52%, a majority, say worse, and only 32% say better. But there's really great insight here, again, in the party numbers about the mindset of Democrats, and Republicans by an 81% to 12% margin say that Biden's worse. Independents, 60% to 20%. Independents do not like Joe Biden. They do not think he's a good president. But 60% of Democrats say he's better than most recent presidents, and that includes Obama. So that's really an eye-opener. 2/3 of Democrats say that Joe Biden is less corrupt than most recent presidents, and that's really stunning. So to recap where we're at with Biden, Democrats still pretty much like him. His approval ratings in the mid-70s among Democrats. Democrats are very anti-Trump, and right now Biden's on track for a nomination as well, winning over the next closest candidate, RFK, by mid-40 points. So it looks like it's going to be a Trump and Biden rematch, and it looks like there's going to be a lot of attention paid to these indictments and a lot of new developments that will probably be really interesting to poll on.
Mark Mitchell, interesting stuff. Head of polling at Rasmussen Reports. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
As the U.S. tries to ease tensions with China, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken spoke with chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping, this morning while in Beijing. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
So the meeting between Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and China's Xi Jinping was not announced until just 45 minutes before the two men shook hands. The Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says the meeting was candid and in some places constructive.
I came to Beijing to strengthen high-level channels of communication, to make clear our positions and intentions in areas of disagreement, and to explore areas where we might work together.
Secretary Blinken was the first U.S. Secretary of State to visit China in the past 5 years. And this meeting comes as U.S.-China tensions are at an all-time high following a spy balloon incident a few months ago, and of course recent military encounters both in the air and on the seas. But Blinken says the U.S. is trying to
De-risk, not decouple.
And he adds,
there are many issues on which we profoundly, even vehemently, disagree. But the United States has a long history of successfully managing complicated, consequential relationships through diplomacy.
And Blinken says he raised human rights concerns to Xi and talked to him about provocative actions by China in the Taiwan Strait. But he also said that despite him calling for it repeatedly, China still refused to reopen military lines of communications with the U.S. Meanwhile, some China experts told us that this meeting was a win for the Chinese Communist Party.
The Chinese are playing us like a puppet. Generally, it would have been better to have the other side wanting to talk to you when you're in a big fuss and a hurry to get to speak with them.
Meanwhile, President Biden reiterated over the weekend that he would like to talk to Xi Jinping in the coming months. But when asked today if a time has been set, the White House says there's nothing to announce just yet. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.